Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome back to Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. We're going to continue our meeting today. And this afternoon, we are taking up again from our last meeting on Friday, the FY24 compensation and benefits for all agencies and our collective bargaining agreements. I think we were going to jump right into the collective bargaining agreements and have, I think, Ms. Wellens, you're going to walk us through the packet.
She's going to be the first jumper.
Yep. Or Ms. Howard, did you want to start?
The only thing I just wanted to mention is that we are still working on some of the follow-up information and requests from the last committee meeting on Friday, and so we'll be sharing that with the committee and the full council as soon as we get that whole package of information together.
Thank you, Chair Stewart and council members. On page 2 of your staff packet for today, there's a joint staff packet for both items 1 and 2. And on page 2, you'll see a chart, your decision chart for collective bargaining agreements, and it is grouped by the types of provisions. So, for example, our first grouping is general wage adjustments, and we've reflected in the chart what the wage adjustments would be for each union, along with the fiscal impact for FY24 and the annual cost beyond FY24. So happy to go into as much or little detail as you'd like. I know you were already briefed on these. So you can see the GWAs reflected there for McGeo 3%. And there's an adjustment for seasonal employees for McGeo. There's also a salary schedule adjustment for the correctional officer salary schedule. FOP has some phased in GWAs, 4% July 2023, 3% January 2024, and 3.5% in July 2024. 3.2% for IAFF, and as you discussed during our first work session, IAFF also has a salary schedule adjustment, eliminating the 2 lowest paid positions and adding 1 at the top.
Great. All right. I think the way we will do this is starting on page 2, look at each block. I think for the service increments, I may do that individually because there's a couple of things in there. But before we dove into the voting on each of these items, I just wanted to open up and see if my colleagues had any opening remarks. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. It sounds like council staff is going to answer some of the questions that we still don't have responses to after this meeting. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Correct, yes. We're preparing some of the responses, and we'll have it. We won't have it in time for this meeting.
Okay, and we received significant information from the labor partners on some of their own financial analyses of some of these various elements. I haven't had a chance to fully go through it, but I appreciate that was one of the follow-ups that we had discussed at the last meeting. My personal view, before we get into the voting, the council president sent a memo asking for effectively non-recommended reductions of vacant positions from the executive branch. We obviously haven't had a response to that yet because it just went out. I'm not suggesting that there should have been. I still have a lot of questions about the vacancies beyond the 556, I believe the number was at our last meeting, that OHR is actively recruiting for currently, leaving us the other 900. I would be more comfortable and most comfortable holding off, waiting until we have all these questions answered, addressing some of these vacancy questions. I don't think that they are exclusive, mutually exclusive totally to the contracts. They're not directly related, but I think they're important for us understanding as major building blocks moving forward. My intention isn't to hold it up for the purpose of, changing decisions necessarily, but I do think we need all the information and we need to weigh it before we make final decisions or make final recommendations. And so that would be my preference, but we'll yield to the will of colleagues, but I just wanted to note that before we begin.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. With all due respect, I appreciate getting as much information as we possibly can. I think that's always very necessary. But we've waited long enough. We've had these discussions this week, last week. The days run together. We've said similar things several times, and so I'm prepared to go forward today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Over the last, week and a half, we've had a lot of committee meetings, and I feel like each meeting we have more information about vacancies. And Director Anderson, I can tell you, like, the information you provided us on Friday was excellent and very important. And I think our budget is an ongoing process. This is one step we need to take, and I'm ready to move forward. I just wanted to say a couple of other things instead of stopping each time we vote on something. And one is just to really thank everyone who has worked on these agreements. I know the work that goes into these, and I appreciate every one of you who are at the table going back and forth and looking for a resolution on this. And we know the challenges we face on recruitment and retention. We discussed that last week, and we know that also that this is not an issue unique to Montgomery County. Other jurisdictions are facing the same challenges. And I will note that not funding contracts will have real costs both financially and in workforce morale. The lack of recruitment and staff means more people have to work overtime, and we end up paying more for labor, and workers feel more stretched thin, whatever. One of those things. When you have staff working with much overtime, as we've been hearing from many of the directors we've talked to, we are diminishing their work-life balance, which leads to poor health outcomes. It harms job satisfaction and creates a scenario where folks will look to work someplace else. And we need to see the forest for the trees here. And we know this is a tough budget year, but inaction is not an option. If we are feeling it with our budgets here at the county, I can only imagine what people are feeling with their personal budgets. And so over the last few years, we know our staff has been showing up for our residents in this county, and I feel like it's time we need to be showing up for them. So I'm prepared to move forward today. Anything else? Yeah.
Appreciate that. I would just like it to be reflected in the packet, and I think we can discuss that at full council as well. Hopefully we'll have more information by the time we get to full council in terms of the answers to some of the questions. I just think that we spent a lot of time at the last committee meeting asking a number of questions. A lot of those questions haven't been answered, so hopefully we can have them answered before full council. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Howard. All right, so we have first general wage adjustments, the first block, which is 1A1 through 1C2. If no objections, I'll just ask for a vote on that whole block of items. All those in favor? No objection. All right. The next, let's do the service increments individually. The first is 2A1. Oh, sorry, Ms. Wellens, did you have something to say on this?
I
Sorry,
just wanted to make a
through.
quick, no, I apologize. I just wanted to make a quick correction actually related to the general wage adjustments, because I had included within this block one the FOP 3.5% increase for July 2024, which is of course not actually part of this fiscal year. So I should have omitted that from there. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Great. All right, service increments. The first one, 2A1, any objections? No. 2A2? No. Yeah, Councilmember.
Well, the makeup steps have been a significant conversation in prior councils. The question of whether a commitment was made to the bargaining partners that these would be funded in out years or not. I personally think that we should decide these at full council. They should at least be a discussion point for the full council, and we should walk through the background and history of that. So I think that at the very least, I think recommending that it be a discussion point at council, but I'm not going to object to any of the line items here, but I do think that a discussion at full council for the makeup steps as funding this agreement should be decided. I will note the totality of the makeup steps in this is not a huge number. I just want to be very clear. there might be a debate based on the information that we received of what that number is at all, but based on even from council staff, it's 1.1 million. I think if you add it all up, so it's not significant, but it is a policy question of whether, when the county council funds or doesn't fund in agreement, of whether or not there is a commitment for that to be funded in a future year or not. And I do think at the very least that warrants a discussion of the full council, that particularly new council members who haven't been here for the prior discussions should be aware of. So I'm not going to object to any of these, but I just think it's important that at least the full council have the benefit of a substantive discussion and explanation of that.
Mr. Holland, I see your name up, his hand up. So if you want to quickly remark, but I think we're going to go through this pretty quickly today.
I just think it's important to add that we don't have makeup steps because we got all of ours. We're all whole. And our union colleagues over here deserve to be made up too. So I think it's very important that they get made up with their increments. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I think what we'll note is for taking what Council Vice President Friedson said, is that for 2A2 and I think it's 2C2, is that correct? Am I looking at the chart correctly? That there's no objection from the committee, but that we will make sure during the full council discussion that we pull those out.
Yeah, and just to let everyone know, we've already talked with the council president, especially because there is a lot of new council members who haven't been through this process before. When we bring the entire package to full council, we will be going into more detail on a lot of the issues as background, kind of like we did for the GEO committee on Friday, but more so than we've done in the past at the full council level.
Great. So then the other items in this block are 2B and 2C1. Any objections? No objections? All right, so then that takes care of service increments. Longevity increments, we can do this as a whole block. We have 3A through 3C. Any objections? Nope. All right, group insurance benefits, 4A and 4C. Any objections? No objections. And then there's increases in special pay. And this is a long list on the rest of page 3 and top of page 4. It goes from 5A1 through 5B5. Any questions or objections? No. All right. And then the last one is increases in clothing, equipment, vehicle use, and transit subsidy, 6A1 through 6B3. Any objections or questions? No, we're good on that. All right. That takes us through that, and then we have the retirement plan increases, and I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Wellens.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So what I'd like to note regarding the retirement plan increases is that, as was discussed during the first work session, these increases are contingent upon legislation that's pending before the council right now, 3 bills that were introduced on the 11th and that will be heard for public hearing on the 25th. So what's really before you today is your recommendation to the council on indicating the council's support to fund these changes for FY24, because of course the whole package is contingent upon the legislation, and your resolutions will reflect that as well. Anything else you'd like me to add?
Anyone have any questions on this? No. All right, so then the first would be on A1 through AC. Any objections? No. And then the leave policy is 7B1 and 7B2. No objections. And then the tuition 9C. Seeing no objections, we are done with that. I think, Mr. Howard, it's back to you. Thank you very much, Ms. Wellens.
Okay, now we're on page 6 and to section 2, which is compensation adjustments outside of the collective bargaining agreements. And the table here shows the GWA service increments and longevity increments for non-represented MLS, fire management, and PLS employees. And the council staff recommendation, given the decisions that were just made on the CBAs, would be to support these as recommended by the executive. And then one thing we want to note is we had mentioned the retiree vision for McGeo and IAFF, and the making that apply to non-represented employees as well. After further discussions with OMB and OHR and late breaking news, the funding that was included in as part of the McGeo contract also had funding in it for non-represented employees as well. So there doesn't need to be an addition to the reconciliation list to extend that benefit to non-reps as well. Okay, so the next section is allocations for group insurance. So the staff recommendation is to support the agency's FY24 tax-supported requests for employee group insurance costs and the FY24 projection for the county government's employee health benefits self-insurance fund. Support the agency's FY24 tax-supported request for retiree pay-as-you-go costs. And for county government, this includes approving the recommended funding of $51 million in the group insurance for retirees NDA. And for OPEB pre-funding to support the executive's recommended pre-funding levels and the amounts that are in the various NDAs for the college, MCPS, and for county government.
Yeah, no objection, but do you just want to rate, because we had information sent to us from labor partners about self-insurance fund and some discrepancies between the CAFR and the budget, and I think it's important that those be addressed. I don't know if we want to address them here, if there's a more appropriate time, but I do think those issues should be addressed.
Yeah, I can mention a couple things briefly here, and then I can include information in the full staff report for when this goes to full council. But the information that we were looking at with the potential balance in the self-insurance fund included the expenditures related to active employee claims, but did not include the expenditures related to retired employee claims, which show in a different section of the financial reports, which is due to the GASB requirements for OPEB and how you have to account for all the retiree health benefits separately from the active employee benefits. So in the financial reports, they're separated, but in actuality, in our group insurance fund, they're all together in the same, come out of the same amount of money. So if you look at the numbers in the financial reports, it might look like there's a money that's not being spent, but that's actually not the case.
Okay, so the huge difference that we are seeing over time is the change from the GASB reporting standards when the OPEB set aside was required for our retiree obligations.
Yeah, if you look,
and we're getting a nod from, I just want to make sure, we're getting a nod from the executive branch that they agree with that. Okay. All right. If you could reflect that in the council packet, I think that's helpful because it does make it appear that there is a lot of money that is available that isn't being properly utilized. And if it is a reporting change because it's reflected in a different part of the budget, then we should have a little note and an asterisk, I think would be helpful. And I actually think even in the budget or in the CAFR, figuring out a way to reflect that, I think would be helpful for moving forward, even noting the date of the GASB change and why the numbers might look different if you look pre that date and after that date.
will do. So the last sections are on page 7 of the staff report, and the first one is the FY24 allocations for retirement. So the staff recommendation is to approve the FY24 contributions for the County Government Employee Retirement System, Retirement Savings Plan, and Guaranteed Retirement Income Plan, and to approve the FY24 recommendation for administrative and operating budgets for the ERS, RSP, GRIP, and Consolidated Retiree Health Benefits Trust, and then to continue to monitor the funded ratios of the agency's pension plans. And then for the compensation-related NDAs, we've mentioned a couple of them in the group insurance section, but there's a couple more. So it's to approve the executive's recommendations for the Montgomery County Employee Retirement Plans, State Position Supplement, and State Retirement Contribution, and also approve the executive's recommendation funding for the Compensation and Employee Benefit Adjustments NDA. This NDA includes the funding for the performance-based pay for MLS staff and lump sum payments for PLS staff.
No objections?
And then the last provision is to once again recommend language in the council's budget resolution specifying that the council approval is required for the provision of general emergency or hazard pay for more than 10 consecutive days and for any provision of COVID-19 hazard pay.
No objections.
And that is it.
All right. So Mr. Howard, is this coming before council on Tuesday? Is that correct?
Correct. April, yes, this
April
coming
25th.
Tuesday.
All right.
in order to meet our May 1st deadline,
Deadline.
for the council to express their intent to approve or reject the provisions of the contracts.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I thank everyone for coming today, and I want to do a special thanks again to Ms. Wellens and Mr. Howard and everyone who's else worked on this, because we just had the meeting on Friday, and then to get this all together and done, I very much appreciate it. So thank you very much, and Go is done for the day. Thank you.